I was watching Fox News yesterday morning. The start of Kwanzaa was the 26th, and they said, as we move into the Kwanzaa season, and then they show a picture of a Kwanzaa setting, and they show the candle holder with the candles. All 7 candles are lit. One candle is leaned over as though it's about to fall out of the candle holders. And I'm saying to myself, someone set up this Kwanzaa scene. Someone took the time to put all the candles in the candle holder. The cameraman, who hopefully is looking for a good shot of Kwanzaa, or the items that are involved in Kwanzaa, are looking through their lens, and they're seeing that this candle is leaned over like it's going to fall out of the candle holder. Why wasn't it adjusted? Why was it broadcast to millions of Americans and international people across the world that the Kwanzaa setting is not right, especially when you compare it to a Macy's Day Parade? Why couldn't this candle be stood upright before the scene was shot or after? Because I know this is all B-roll stuff. What about the person that set up the Kwanzaa scene? I mean, how did the candle lean over?
I don't know if there's an issue with repurposing, the menorahs for the Jewish holiday, but I've seen, and I think it was yesterday also, I was watching television and one of the candles was leaned over. So I don't know if it's just a defect, but yes, it does look poorly upon what we're trying to do in that candle.
But the cameraman can say, dude, your Kwanzaa candle is leaned to the right. Can one of you African Kwanzaa celebrators please straighten the candle? Because
there were African Kwanzaa celebrators on.
Well, I don't think that the white people set up the Kwanzaa setting. I think they went to cover the footage of the Kwanzaa setting wherever they went.
This wasn't in the studio.
So you're saying that the Kwanzaa setting was in the actual news studio, and they're the ones that leaned the candle. What kind of disrespect? And I did notice that all 7 of the candles were lit.
Right.
So which means that
they didn't care to learn the premise.
Doesn't understand what. So who's setting up this B-roll of Kwanzaa settings, and who's making it look so poor? So because which child is going to look at because a child knows when the candle is leaned. They're usually ones that lean it over and know that when a parent comes home, that there's going to be hell to pay because the candle is leaned over. So when a child sees and says, well, somebody obviously doesn't care about that candle, so why should I care about the candle? And then all 7 candles are lit. Somebody didn't take time to read the Kwanzaa book. The Kwanzaa book is not a long book.
It's like 20 pages.
Kwanzaa book, I think the longest part of the Kwanzaa book is in Nguzo Saba, which are the 7 principles. And that's if, you care to get into the, perusing it, because you can just get the shorthand version of the principles. But if you want to get the long principles, then, you certainly, that's going to be the largest portion of the book, because the purpose of Kwanzaa is to understand that we've had principles of how to live with each other and live with the planet since we found ourselves here. And Kwanzaa was a time that we codified these principles in the United States for African American people and for the Pan-African spirit that reaches back over to the continent and say, here, this is something that we've went over to the continent, we've studied the continent, we've adapted it to our particular situation here in the States, and we're now exporting it so that if you all want to use this version as well, please feel free, because it's just another African tradition that was grown off continent. So it's a truly Pan-African celebration, especially in places like Ghana, I think places like Kenya, I'm pretty sure South Africa celebrates as well. And then, but I don't know, the news doesn't do a good job. It's an afterthought, and it's a very shoddy coverage when you compare it to the Macy's Day Parade and the football game.
But which way should we lean? So should we be just as anal retentive about Kwanzaa as people are about Christmas, where the lights have to be coordinated, everything has to be just right because it's Christmas and it's, a special time of year? Should we adopt that or reject it and say, all right, well, we have this understanding, and whether the candle is linked or not, it's about the principles that we should be living?
Well, it's a combination, right? So if we got to also remember that we do live in a capitalist America in this country, and there's certain time frames in which business is booming and then business is on a lull. So I think, yes, we should highlight the principles all year, every day, but to coincide with, as we were saying, when business is in a lull, when people have vacations, et cetera, we should also have that time when people are more available to be able to get together and hone those principles. Then at the same time, these other events are happening, Christmas, Hanukkah, etc.
I don't know if you're addressing my question. I'm asking, should we be just as materialistic? Should we be just about the presentation of as...
But it's never been about materialism. The Kwanzaa itself
be about because that's where we are failing as the diaspora. We tend to find excellence in establishments and activities that are not our own. And when we look to our establishments and our activities that's rooted in our culture, we either don't find excellence in it or we allow people to drag it down or disrespect it without challenge. Kwanzaa is a commitment. And Kwanzaa, it's a commitment because it's based on community. And the heart of every community is family. So it's either based on family or community. And there's some things that you have to do if you want to do Kwanzaa right.
Buy a mat.
You have to buy a mat. Now, let's compare the
expense.
Not necessarily the expense, but what we call the things necessary to purchase or make versus the things that we go out and purchase or make for Christmas. It's more than doable.
Yeah, it's very economical. And you can recycle it. I mean, nowadays, well, down here in Florida, people buy live trees, but in New York, everybody had a plastic tree that they just recycled every year.
Just easy, man. Just because I was poor doesn't mean I had a plastic tree. We got a live tree too.
You did not have a live tree?
Yeah, we did have a live tree.
Well, I always had a plastic tree.
Well,
and I ain't know nothing about no live tree until I came down here. So
what do you mean you ain't know nothing about no live tree?
I didn't see you with no live tree.
Of course we had live tree.
And then you had water underneath it to water it and stuff?
Yeah, even in Brooklyn.
Okay.
It was a mission.
Well, I thought it was fake.
The first tree was a live. Yeah, the first Christmas tree in my house was a live tree. No, it wasn't my tree.
It was a borrowed tree?
No, I was a child. So somebody chopped down a tree and brought it to the house and set it up. I had to help set it up. I knew it was because it kept sticking me in my hand. It was real. It wasn't like plastic because the plastic ain't supposed to stick you in your hand. You're supposed to bleed. That was real wood and it was piney. But you see, how did you just hijack my Kwanzaa explanation with a Christmas tree? What we're saying is that the things that you need for Kwanzaa are just as readily available to you as the things that you would need for Christmas. And if they're not, you can make them yourself. So you would need a mat, you need a candle holder, you would need 7 candles.
Different colors, green, red, black, 1 black.
1 black, 3 red, 3 green. You would need a basket. Inside the basket, you would need some vegetables, preferably not the kind that spoil very quickly, and some fruits. You would need some ears of corn.
I have issue with that because, in our dietary journey, we've come to understand that corn is inflammatory. So why would I want to, can't we substitute corn?
No, because the corn is not for eating. The corn is a representation
of
the stock and of children.
Oh.
And it's how corn
grows?
It's the way the corn grows. And also corn was always a staple as far as being an emergency survival food. Okay. So it was, you got the carbohydrates out of it very quickly and readily. It grows very abundantly. So it was just like we use it today for feed. We fed ourselves with it during times of famine and scarcity.
Corn is in everything, literally everything. Even if you think it doesn't have corn in it, it has corn in it.
That's why we all have cornholes now.
Gift exchange, from what I understand, preferably like homemade, self-made, meaning.
And usually the gift is geared towards the children. And the reason that the gifts were included and geared towards the children was so that they wouldn't feel left out, so that they could have this inclusiveness. So for the adults, understand, where the gifts come from and that there's no Santa and all this stuff, really we need to really look into this gift exchange.
But the dating of Kwanzaa allows for a cop-out where you can still participate in Christmas, receive the gifts, and then still
so you have to
take the time
have to discipline yourself and stop trying to double dip. Stop trying to double dip. Stop trying to be a double holiday agent.
Okay, understood. And I could do that. And I could tell everybody, all right, I got you gifts, but you're going to get it in the days of Kwanzaa. You
don't give Kwanzaa gifts to people that don't celebrate Kwanzaa. What are you doing?
What's that? That's a rule?
Of course. the gifts that are given for Kwanzaa are giving as a reward to good behavior.
So none of my Euro Latin friends can participate?
Do they
celebrate Kwanzaa? Are they putting out the candles? Are they have the mat? Do they have the fruit and the corn?
I'm saying, I mean,
this is what happens when we take our culture and we acculturate. We take the black coffee and we start pouring creamer into it. And then even worse than cream, we start putting the powder flavor. This goes back to my point of how and why we can't even take each other seriously when we say we celebrate Kwanzaa. And even there are some people that even dress up and look like they may celebrate Kwanzaa and greet you, Habari Gani, and they still aren't quite sure about how to go through the 7. Because if you're going to have to go through the 7 days of Kwanzaa, and it takes a commitment because every day you need to, and at the end, i.e. the 7th day, according to the calendar, and by the way, this is not the 1st or the 3rd it's always the same 7 days of the year. It's the 7 days following the 25th of December. So that's the 26th through the 31st. Does that make 7 days? Because even New Year's is an actual day. Then that would make the 7th or the 8th. New Year's Day would make the 7th day, right? Mm-hmm. So New Year's Day would be the culmination. And you can incorporate it with celebrating New Year's as well. Because New Year's, in my understanding, is not a spiritually religious-oriented holiday as much as it is a day recognized that, we've made a revolution around the sun. That's pretty much universal. Each of us celebrate it at different times culturally, but it's strictly having to do with the revolution around the sun and the veneration for that, as opposed to any deity per se.
Eventually I'm going to have children, and the thing is the not the whole thing, not lying to them. However, given the world that we live in, they're going to be exposed to other children who will still subscribe to Nana Kibbalan, right? Children who still subscribe to the traditional Christianity or Christmas or what have you. And so just the problems that may come up with that in terms of explaining to them, okay, well, Dad, why do we do this? It's opposed to what's happening at school, because I'm not, obviously not around them at school, right? And this is when they're young, right? So having to explain to them, okay, we're doing this as opposed to this, and particularly family too. Family's not necessarily.
Oh, you're going to be accused of not allowing your children to celebrate Christmas.
To have a childhood.
Yeah,
they should have accused. A period of just being in the dark about reality, and they should live in a fairy tale for a period. And
so you have to be welcoming and understanding of those accusations. If you care for these people that are doing the accusing. If not, you can just go to hell. But yeah, you're accused often by those closest to you of ripping the joy out of the hands of your children, and the innocence, and
right.
out of the hands of your children, sometimes their grandchildren.
I don't know. For those that disagreed with my parenting and mine not subscribing to Santa, I explained to them there was no way that I was going to work all the hours that I did and take the shit that I do and then pretend to my children that some fat white dude is the one that is creating this joy for them when I did the work.
Especially when there's a fat black dude in the house.
And not have them give us the credit for what we do every day and getting up and making sure that, we have some sort of livelihood so that they can enjoy their lives. No way.
No way. That was everything. I was just not.
And the other thing is that in the way that we raise the children, all right, you brought home good grades. All right, so here's a little something. Did you have something in mind? You want to go shopping? So there wasn't this thing about, oh, well, you got to wait till Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
If something occurred and we saw that it merited to be celebrated, it was done right then and there. So there wasn't a missing out. I mean, we have times now where family comes to visit and they want to go shopping. It's like, what do you want? And these children can't think of anything because we don't create that void where there's that longing that they're not getting what they want. They have to wait for a particular holiday. They have to wait for their birthdays in order to
children do say
gifts.
Stuff like that. Like we have relatives that come down and try to take them to buy stuff.
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't really want an iPad. My son has told his grandmother, no, thank you. I don't want anything.
And it's not even being polite like he does, but he doesn't want to, make her feel obligated. Honestly, can't think of anything.
Uh-huh.
Go back and remind him, hey, don't you need a new pair of shoes?
Yeah. Don't you need some?
Don't you want some art supplies? I mean,
new Jordans. I mean,
it's okay to accept it. And he's like, but I just don't really need anything.
But I think part of it is not having set up the expectation that they're always going to be receiving. Because if that mentality, then every time somebody comes around, it's like, okay, well, what am I going to get?
The point is, we're way behind. And when I say way behind, don't take that as a call to catch up, because that's not what we need to be doing either.
What we need to be doing?
Catch up to what?
So why catch up? Is catch up the best way to say it?
Right. So when I say we're behind, we have to know what we're behind in. We're behind in taking ownership of our original culture. We're not behind in a race with Europeans, because that's a race we cannot win. We cannot catch up in, because that is not our race to run. And if we decide to get into that arena, we do not control the track.
Or the arena.
We do not control the arena. We do not control the rules. We do not control the crowd. And we do not control the gambling that takes place. We don't control the refs. And while you're in the middle of running your race, they're allowed to change the rules to say that the people that come in last place are the winners. So you're dealing with a group of people who can change the rules real time on you and really reverse what you think is your reality several times during the day. So catching up in a system like that, it's an exercise in futility and stupidity. I was having a conversation with a coworker the other day about the idea of universal truth. And, I'm so thankful for the book Yorugu that you sent after you were finished with it, Marimba, because I did believe in something called universalism or universal truth, because that was taught to me in my first socialization, in my first culturalization or education. I was taught that there is logical facts. There are universal truths. There are strong theories that can't be argued against, such as the example they always use is gravity, right? And then now we have this wonderful thing called the internet, and you can go onto this website called Wikipedia and look up universalism, and you can get to find out that it's a philosophy from Greco-Roman times. And I'm glad that my first understanding of that came from Marimba Ani, and the fact that they created universal truth. They created universalism. They created the universal man. All right? And trying to explain this to a coworker, I really got the understanding that if you are not tethered to an Al-Kebalan culture, then you're really like a sheet blowing in the wind, or an antenna, really, I should say, that's picking up broadcasts from everywhere. And you're just trying to comply with all these broadcasts. You're not specific to anything. You're just wanting to be everything and fit in everywhere.
Universal receiver.
You want to be a universal receiver when you're not tethered to your culture. So because I'm tethered to a culture that says that, no, there isn't a universal reality. There are always going to be more than one reality based on the players involved in the situation. And to see it from that aspect is truly the Al-Kebalan mindset, that you can look at things from different angles and see different realities in them. And even as you get into the higher modes of thought with European schools, you get to understand that they have this thing called realms now, right? or dimensions, right? Which deal with the fact that there isn't one reality. But this is them getting to their highest form of science, which is like string theory and things like that. So you have to get to an absurd level of physics and science to understand that there is no reality in European thought, which, you know, even their PhD degrees don't prepare them for unless you're into advanced physics, unless you're a Tyson, what's his name?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, unless you're a Neil deGrasse Tyson or one of his colleagues, and that's not even your area to argue those things. But me having some kind of being a fundamental fan of those people and following their work and, you know, just a cursory overview of their work, I can see that they're getting into the understanding now that there is no such thing as universal truth. It's all based on perception from where you are, where you're standing in time and space.
That's what relativity is about.
It's relativity. So to explain this to a coworker is nearly impossible because they're not rooted in that tradition of understanding that there are various realities. Whereas an Al-Kebalan mind should be rooted. And we should understand that everyone we meet has a different reality. And this has to do with psychology as well, right? Mm-hmm. This is how people are able to even treat psychological issues, drug addiction, things like this by sympathizing with that understanding, by understanding that a crackhead is going to see reality different from a weed head or from an alcoholic or from a sober person, right? But that's not even the deepest. The deepest it goes is when you come into this election season and you got to the understanding that Europeans were now appending universal reality with something that they called alternative facts, alternative realities. So these were real time. By the way, all that means is lies, right? Did anybody get that?
I didn't miss it.
All right. So an alternative fact or an alternative reality is a lie that contradicts the well-known fact of something or the proof, evidence, or logic of something, but can be accepted by a large body of people who want to believe it or don't want to believe that the person lied to them. Right? This is layers and layers of psychosis. So the fact that they're opening up now streams of truth or alternative truth, alternative facts. So are they becoming more African? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, well, wait.
Huh?
The answer is no. I was being facetious, right? No, they're not becoming more African. They're starting to see the contradiction of their theories. And in seeing the contradiction of their theories, rather than deal with it head on and say, or rather than admit that there's no such thing as universal truth. There is a widely agreed upon, what I'm going to say is white supremacist way of or mode of operating in order to maintain what I believe is the most dangerous thing that a Negro can maintain is status quo. The Al-Kebalan mind bent on maintaining status quo, in my opinion, has been the most destructive force against us. Because status quo is kind of whatever Europeans say it is at the time, right? So if status quo, if the order of the day is enslavement of African people, then you would have Africans who want to maintain status quo by gaining their freedom and buying slaves, right? You'd have Africans that want to sell slaves in order to profit from said thing. Right? So we need to strive away from being status quo Negroes. I made it rhyme too, like Nas.
So why didn't y'all do anything for Kwanzaa? Where are your candles?
I got all my research done pretty late. And by the time I acclimated myself to all the things that needed to be done, I had run out of time and it would have been a rush job. And it would have ended up looking like one of those.
Instead of one candle, it'd be 5 candles to the side.
5 candles, and only 2 of them would have had wicks.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been no map. So in not wanting to disrespect the thing and not wanting to take away from the excellence that I spoke about earlier, I decided to postpone it until next season.
And you, Jermaine?
I mean, I actually did find mahogany greeting cards for Kwanzaa. I actually found them tucked away in a CVS here in New Jersey. So I got a big packet of them so I can save them for the future. To have all of the principles and everything on them. I don't know why I didn't do anything. I mean, I did gotta get the cards. I actually placed a Kwanzaa card on the mantle of Christina Mother's home. So I was like, "Can I place this card here among all these Christmas cards?" She's like, "Yeah, no problem." So
it also, like Evelyn alluded to earlier, in my learning of it now, it feels that I would be doing it more to be a contrarian.
Yeah.
Actually celebrate the principles. And I wanted to distance myself from that feeling as well. So it didn't feel like I was doing it out of rebelliousness. You know, I feel that if I enter it that way,
it wouldn't be genuine.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of cleanse my palate, you know, from reversing the way I've always been contrary to Christmas. And I tell you, when you lose one religion, it really does put you in a dangerous position to not commit fully to other spiritual systems, especially if you go the route of studying the history of that religion.
Mm-hmm.
You study how, you know, if it's not like a peaceful transition, but if it's something that you wrested back for yourself, then you become very guarded about opening up yourself to other spiritual realms. And I would have to say that's where I am right now. I'm in a place where I need to heal from the damages of widely accepted European Christianity, really cleanse my palate, fast myself off of it, and then try to reacclimate myself with Al-Kebalan spirituality, including celebrating.
It's tough, man, because like corn, it's everywhere in everything. When you look at your calendar, you're looking at a Gregorian calendar, the fact that we work Monday through Friday and have the weekends off, well, most of us, 40-hour work week.
So we got to pack.
Pack for what? Are you going to Liberia?
No. We're going
Liberia,
to a place with more Africans, Georgia.